And you said that deduction is not one half of the scientific method, and we can hopefully touch on that.
If pure deduction is a science, then Sherlock Holmes is a book about a scientist, and I don't think anyone would argue that point.
Or sense perception, firstly, to understand that we have a perceiver who is actually inquiring. In other words, I myself as a perceiver am actually able to think about this, and in rational coherence, which would be the law of non-contradiction. And I think both of you will happily concede those two presuppositions, will you not?
Science is mostly about empirical observation once the presupposition necessary for science have been laid down.
Given those two presuppositions, I know then scientifically that I exist. Fox, would you agree with that? That is a scientific verity that I, with sense perception, am scientifically experiencing myself?
Things like sense perception and rational coherence are presupposed in science.
So it's not a scientific reality that you exist?
They are not inferred in science.
And I'm asking for the axiom, not of your self-existence. I'm asking for the axiom of your sensory perception in order to know it's yourself.
If you need my input to make your point, then you don't actually have an argument. Okay. So if you can get there without me, then you have an argument. If you need my input and you need to ask leading questions, well, then you don't really have an argument. So a coherent argument does not require any other input. Scientists do not go up and give lectures, nor do philosophers and say, well, here, now to get to the next point, let me talk to the audience here. Hey, everybody, what's your answer to this? That doesn't happen in philosophy. It doesn't happen in science because you have to have a coherent argument without other people's input. Can you figure out how to get there without me having to answer questions?
No.
Really? Okay, well, that's something I recommend you work on.
It's an empirical, we validate that empirically. I think that's fair to say that, rather than scientifically.
Well, to me, it's the same thing. I don't know what the difference would be in that.
Now, one of the issues I actually have with the argument is you use the word contingent when you're talking about a contingent being. You should actually write out a contingent being or a contingent entity or a contingent thing. But instead, you just say contingency. And the problem with that is it doesn't make any sense. It's a misuse of the word.
You need to explain, Trey. You make these conclusions.
There's a problem, Trey, is you don't offer syllogisms. You just throw out these non sequiturs without offering any syllogism.
The next thing is the throwing of incredulity. Never throw incredulity.
You just throw out these non sequiturs without offering any syllogism. Show how it follows.
I'm telling you.
Show how self-existence necessitates omnipotence.
Never throw your hands up in exasperation when somebody quizzes you or grills you. The best thing you can do is calm down, try to explain it to the best of your capability.
You're throwing out non sequiturs. It doesn't matter if something acts on it or doesn't act on it. It's irrelevant.
Well, indeed.
It's totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant.
You're bringing that in as it has no bearing on what we're saying. Imagine some being or state of affairs that exists independently of anything else, which you would try to have your God be, okay? And then from that state of affairs or being, which exists ontologically necessary for all contingent things which follow from it. It doesn't exist logically necessary, which I've been through this time and time again, and you don't seem to understand that concept. So you need to do, Trey, for your argument to work, you need to show how necessarily only God could be that self-existent thing.
And then if you're really hard-pressed and can't answer, be happy to say, I don't really know how I can formulate it at this juncture. Maybe I should study up on this some more, quote other people, and come back to continue the discussion.
Well, think about it. If something exists and something else acts upon it, then it is subject to that which is bringing the action, is it not, Floyd?
Why?
The next thing is you do not define your terms, Trey. Please define your terms. I will define my terms in this video when I defend your argument better than you do.
So when I say contingency, and you've even pointed that out, you said that's what it means, but you should be more clear. Well, you understood what I was saying.
Well, no, actually, I didn't. You have to spell like I mean by contingent being. But the problem is, if you're making an argument from contingency, you can't change the definition of contingency that is used in arguments from contingency. Otherwise, you're making up your own argument. Like, I'm arguing in favor of an egg, and by that I mean I'm arguing in favor of a hat.
Why is anything acting upon it? We're saying there is some state of affairs or being which...
The next thing is throwing of ad hominems, criticizing people's understanding of philosophy.
You guys are so sophomoric.
I don't know why you're jumping on this like this.
This is it, my friend. This is it. You
think
have no answer for this. Go for it.
No, you. Why are you being rude? This is why people don't want to talk to you, Trey.
Oh, give me a break.
When you yourself also do not understand a lot of philosophy.
Exists independently of anything else, right? Stop being stuck on the sending train.
Oh, good grief. You guys are so thin-skinned. If you could...
Well, but just...
Somebody steals your purse, you start crying.
No, it's...
Otherwise, you would have caught a lot of basic points that you missed out.
Oh my gosh!
So,
if I could have somebody who understands a modicum of philosophy here, please.
Oh, please, Trey.
And you were particularly rude. I'm not sure if it was deserved, like you should have been rude or not, but you were particularly rude to the point where I don't think Ozzy has any interest in discussing it with you for that reason. And also the fact that you tend to try to bait people into discussions, like, oh, you're too scared to debate. You're not willing, not going to put your money where your mouth is.
You can't deny that you were being mocking in that exchange just now.
You're making a ridiculous argument. I'm saying go for it.
How is it ridiculous?
I've never met
How is it ridiculous?
Science is universal, so you need to have the language set out for everyone to use the exact same words and the exact same definitions. Otherwise, nobody knows what you're talking about. And philosophy, even more so, I think, than science. So when you take contingency and you change the definition, you've ruined the argument from the start. No one knows what you're talking about, and you have to keep explaining, well, here's what I really mean. In which case, why not just use the correct words?
I mean, this is so painfully easy, you guys.
Things to touch upon or define. This is the section where I touch upon and define things. This goes into our next word, which was heavily abused by Trey Jadlow, which is contingency. Something in the Aristotelian and Thomistic doctrine, which is contingent, is not having its existence by virtue of its own nature.
I think it might be you're trying to trade off on the headway that's already been made with a contingency argument. Like R.C. Sproul and others have used an argument from contingency to try and demonstrate that a God exists. But you're not presenting that. You're presenting a weird God for a contingent being exists, and then it goes from there. But that doesn't really follow. Since I've talked to you a bit more about this, I found out that what you mean by contingency is not what philosophers mean. It's not even what laymen mean when they talk about something being contingent. And so people think they're on the same track, but then they get confused, like, why is he not accepting my correction? That's because you actually mean something different than what they think you do. Well, that's kind of the thing. Why would a scholar want to debate someone like Vine so badly that he would use the kind of childish language of, are you scared, or you don't put your money where your mouth is, that kind of thing? That's not something you expect from a scholar. You expect a scholar to be like, well, my work stands on its own. It's in the literature. And that's usually all. That's all. You don't need any further. I mean, when people start doing that kind of tactic, kind of skeptical people start going, why is it? Is he really? Is the fear on the other end? You know?